Hello everyone, Mrs. Edstrom here. We are working on solving two-step equations now. So, taking it one step further, we did one-step equations, which really meant we had one step in there to solve it, and now we're going to look at two steps. It's going to take two operations to solve these problems. So, take a moment, find page 9. It looks like this. And it says solving two-step equations at the top. Fill in the date and go ahead and take a moment to fill in the essential question. How do I solve two-step equations? Those of you that maybe are using your own paper might want to take this moment to fill out the rest of this template here. Alrighty, we should be ready to go now. We're going to practice. We're going to learn how to solve two-step equations. And we're going to use these steps right here to help us with identifying that. And we're going to go over some vocabulary here. So when you are solving two-step equations, first of all, this is the kind of problems we're looking at. Something like this. We can see that there is a 5 and an x there. We can see that there's a plus 3. We know that to get rid of addition, we do subtraction. Well, that's kind of hard to read here. Let's use a different pen. We use subtraction. We know that's something we're going to need to do. We know that this is multiplication and that we need to use division. The question is which order? There's two steps. We're going to use the inverse operations just like we did with one-step equations. If this was x plus 3, we'd subtract 3. If this was just 5x, we would divide by x and use division. So now we've got to figure out which order are we doing these steps in. And that's what these steps here are going to help you identify with. There's a few different ways that we can do this. And I'm going to show you this one way, and we might talk in class about another way to be practicing and helping identify the order. So the first thing that you need to do in the equation is to identify the constant. The constant, remember that's the number with no variable. We should know that, but if you don't, you can add that underneath. The constant, the number with no variable, and the coefficient. This is the number next to the variable, or being multiplied. The number times the variable, let's say that. So the first thing we're going to do is identify the constant and the coefficient. Then we are going to eliminate them in the following order. We're going to eliminate the constant by using inverse operations. We're always going to use our inverse operations. So for a constant, that's going to be addition or subtraction. Because with a constant, we're just adding or subtracting a constant. So we're going to use the inverse to undo that. When we go to eliminate the coefficient, we again are going to use the inverse operation. And in this case, that's going to be multiplication or division. Because our coefficient is the number that's being times by the variable. It's being multiplied. So we have to undo that with either multiplication or division, depending on if it's a fraction or not. And then, like always, we gotta check your answer. We are always going to check our answer, and this becomes more important here in these types of problems. So let's take a look. The first thing that we need to do is identify that constant and the coefficient. So our constant is this plus 5. That's the number with no variable. So that's the first thing I want to eliminate. How do I undo addition? Yeah, I use subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 5 on both sides. We're going to leave this whole term over here just as though this was x all by itself. If we had x plus 5, we would subtract 5 on each side. That gets rid of our constant and leaves me with x divided by 3 equal to, what is 1 minus 5? 1 minus 5 is negative 4 because we're going to go past 0 into the negative numbers. Now I need to identify my coefficient. This is where some of you might not be used to your coefficient being a fraction. My coefficient is technically 1/3. There's an invisible 1 by that x. So 1/3, that means divided by 3 here. That's my coefficient. How do I undo division? When I am undoing division, I use multiplication. 3 divided by 3 is 1. That's what eliminates that to leave me with x. So same thing over here, we're multiplying by 3. Negative 4 times 3 is what? It is negative 12. Now remember, I'm not done. This is where checking your work is going to be, it's going to be so much more helpful at this point now that we have two-step equations. I have to go back to the original question where we had our x value divided by 3, then we added 5, and we said it was going to equal 1. I got to go back to that very first part, and I'm saying that this x was negative 12. I want to check my work to see. So what is negative 12 divided by 3? Negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. Now I can add 5. So what is negative 4 plus 5? Negative 4 plus 5 is equal to 1. And that's what the other side was equal to as well. So I can say yes, it is correct. Notice this is a little bit more important of a step now that there's multiple things to do. Let's move on down to this problem here. First step, so we got negative 3r minus 1. First step, we got to identify the constant and the coefficient. So the constant, that would be this minus 1. 3 times r, they're kind of connected. I think of them as this is one term altogether, right? And I think of this 1 is off by itself. It's the furthest thing away from my variable, and so that's the first thing we have to get rid of, whatever's the furthest away. So how do I undo subtraction? Addition, so plus 1 on both sides. When we have minus 1 plus 1, that is 0. That's how we eliminate that term. So that all we have left is the negative 3r equals negative 39. We're at negative 40. Adding 1 is going to bring us one number closer to 0. So we have negative 39. Be careful. Be careful with those. What is my coefficient now? Yeah, my coefficient, it's not just 3, it's negative 3, and it's being multiplied. It's being multiplied. So how do I undo multiplication? I undo multiplication with division. So I'm going to divide by negative 3. Negative divided by negative is a positive. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So all I have left on this left-hand side here is r. This is part of why I like to use colors. I can see right away that I haven't done anything on this side. So I can come back over here and say, oh, I divided by negative 3. So that's what needs to happen over here. Divided by negative 3. So negative divided by negative is a positive. 30 divided by 3 is 10. And 9 divided by 3 is 3. So you can kind of divide in pieces, or you could do the other way. 9 divided by 3 gives me the 3, and then 30 divided by 3 gives me the 10 part. So right now I'm saying my answer is r equals 13, but I want to go back and check my answer. So I'm going to rewrite the original problem. Negative 3 times r minus 1, and it's supposed to equal negative 40. Let's see if it does. So I'm plugging in 13 here. What is negative 3 times 13? Well, first, negative times a positive is negative. And then 3 times 13, I would do this in pieces. 3 times 10 is 30. 3 times 3 is 9. So negative 39. We still have our minus 1. So negative 39 minus 1 is going to take me one number further away from 0 to get negative 40. And that is what the other side was as well. So right now we have two sides of the equation and they both equal the same amount. That means my answer is correct. I can come back over and say for sure that r is equal to 13. Alrighty, how are we doing? Questions? Let us know if you have any questions. We'll probably come back and maybe do these other two a little bit later on. And we'll be doing some practice problems moving forward.